Before I begin, allow me to sell out and talk about the new NBA Stuff podcast. In the description, talked about Dennis Schroeder, talked about Star Wars Last Jedi, if it's there if you want to listen to it. Now let's talk about the OKC Thunder for the second time this season. I think I talked about them about a month ago, and typically when I talk about a team during the year, I like to go a decent ways before I speak on them again, but given OKC's situation with the star players, I feel like this is one where we can all just kind of watch game by game and see how it develops. And as a result, I think I can talk about them a little bit more often, and there's actually like new stuff to say. So with OKC, I mean, it's the offense, man. 21st in offense, 105.4 offensive rating. At this point, they were actually a better offensive team last year, where it was Westbrook and a suppressed Oladipo, and then a whole bunch of just players who can do little things here and there offensively. And the first thing we should look at with these guys is the fact that the threes are not going in, mainly from Carmelo Anthony. Melo, he's shooting about 6 a game. He's shooting a little under 34% from three, which I think is disappointing, given that you would expect that Melo could do a bit more, because, I mean, we've seen him play off ball, especially in the Olympics, the classic Olympic Melo, and you figured he was just going to be knocking him down from outside. Now, is there a chance that that could go up? Well, if we look at his past few seasons, Melo really has not been that good from three since like 2015, but he was never getting open shots the way that he can with Westbrook on his team now. So I gotta hope that Melo gets more of these threes to go down, because you think he should. You know, he should be a good enough shooter to where he can do that. Paul George, on the other hand, he's shooting over 40% and he's taking 7.5 a game. So Paul George he's doing what you want him to do. As far as Westbrook, his threes, I mean, whatever. I don't expect Westbrook to go nuts from three pretty much ever. So if he can just shoot slightly under league average, I'll take it. But I do want to focus on Westbrook here. Well, actually, before I say that, the only other guy who's really making threes is Alex Abrinas. Patrick Patterson and Raymond Felton, these are guys who hopefully they can do enough shot making for you. Patterson has really had a tough time offensively to start the season. If he can start making shots for them, that would be great. But, yeah, let's talk about Westbrook now, because I think this is pretty interesting. I watched a few fourth quarters that the Thunder have had lately. There was the fourth quarter against the Jazz. There was a fourth quarter against the Spurs. And I might have watched one more. I don't remember exactly. But, you know, I saw a decent amount of fourth quarter basketball for these guys. It's just Russell Westbrook every possession. And not necessarily that Westbrook is shooting the ball every single time or that he's over-dribbling every single time, but he's determining what happens every single time. Now, of course, he's a great point guard. He's a great passer. So, of course, that's always going to be a part of your team. Like, the ball should be in the hands of the best ball handler and the guy with the crazy athleticism to the basket. Like, I get that. But every single possession, I mean, Kyrie Irving does not have the ball in his hand every single possession late for the Celtics. Steph Curry does not have the ball in his hand every single possession for the Warriors late in the game, you know? The Portland Trailblazers don't just dump it off to Damian Lillard and tell him to, you know, we're going to run something, but it's going to start with you. Like, having some sort of motion is the ideal thing, you know what I mean? And so it's like, okay, even if Carmelo Anthony gets a post-up, or even if Paul George comes across some screens or whatever, there's never any, like, advantages gained. Because, like, typically if you'd want Melo to post up, you'd want him to post up off of a switch, so he gets a smaller guy on him. That doesn't happen, because a lot of the time late in the games, Melo doesn't even set a screen for Westbrook. It's like Westbrook comes up floor, dribbles for a little bit, something develops or nothing develops, then he dumps it off to Melo. Melo being defended by the opposing team's small forward or power forward or whoever, rather than being defended by potentially a smaller guy. That's the type of thing that I'd like to see more, you know? Melo setting a screen for Westbrook and then doing that. But you know the other thing? Paul George and Carmelo Anthony are pretty decent ball handlers. Like, Paul George, he's averaged around 3 to 4.5 assists for a decent chunk of his career. Last season he had Jeff Teague, so his assists were down. But like in 2016, Paul George averaged like 4 assists a game. He's a decent ball handler who can beat guys off the bounce. Carmelo Anthony can also play in the pick and roll pretty well, which I think is sometimes easy to forget. I mean, I forget that sometimes, that Melo can be a good ball handler, just because, I don't know, you see him as like a small ball 4, you think of him off ball, or you think of him in like isolations and post-ups, but you don't remember, like, yeah, you can give him the ball at the top of the key, and he can kind of go to work and do something. Now, of course, I wouldn't want to do that all the time, but again, like, you can force a switch, and then you can do that. Or you could have Paul George and Steven Adams do a pick and roll, or Paul George and Carmelo Anthony do a pick and roll. Although that one would be kind of easy to switch. But whatever, like, it's just Westbrook every time, you know? Paul George can make plays. Melo can make plays. Raymond Felton can make plays. I will say, one of the games I watched when they lost to the Nets in the fourth quarter, I didn't see the entire fourth quarter, but some of it looked like they were actually running other things besides just Westbrook. So there's something for you. But the other thing that should be said is, like, I think Westbrook can be a devastating off-ball player. I mean, if you get him rolling to the rim, if you get him cutting off ball, if you had him moving off of screens, how the hell are you going to defend Westbrook with his athleticism and how hard he plays? But then it's a combination of, well, is it Westbrook that we should blame because he doesn't want to play off ball? Because a lot of the time with him, it's like, if the ball's not in his hands, he's just kind of creeping around the three-point line. He's not really engaged in any sort of motion or setting off-ball screens. He's not really doing anything. Is that his fault, or is it Billy Donovan's fault? I mean, Billy Donovan ran some actual stuff in Florida. Like, you can find moments where the Thunder run actual plays with a lot of motion. I remember I was watching the first quarter of the Jazz game, and the very first play of the game, they ran this set where, like, Melo and Paul George both moved off ball simultaneously, and they kind of like crossed paths or whatever. And it made the defense go like, what the hell do we do? And then I don't remember if they actually made the shot, but they got a good look out of it. And I was like, oh, okay, that's what I like to see, you know? But then they don't do that stuff consistently enough, you know? But unfortunately, you know, we're not in the huddles, we're not in the locker room, we're not with Billy Donovan as he's drawing up these plays. For all we know, he's drawing up this type of stuff, and then Westbrook's just like, I'm not about it. Or Billy Donovan is not drawing these things up. I mean, I don't know. I don't know who to blame. But regardless of whose ever fault it may or may not be, they need some more dynamic stuff. And I think they have the players to do it, you know what I mean? Now, one other little tidbit that could result in their offense improving a bit is that they're actually one of the worst free throw shooting teams in the league this season. They are second worst in the NBA at 71% from the line. So they're leaving potentially 2 or 3 points at the line every game. And I mean, if we look at some of the percentages, Westbrook's at low 70s, Melo's at like 77. And I think Westbrook would be the big one because he's typically been like over 80% from the line for his career. So if he just makes those, then you're going to be a little better of an offensive team anyway. So there's that. So what I'm basically getting at is, mainly in fourth quarters, if you're not going to run super dynamic stuff with a whole lot of movement, at the bare minimum, I think they should utilize Carmelo Anthony and Paul George's ball handling abilities a little bit more. And hopefully Westbrook can just be an off-ball player. I mean, he could be a great off-ball player if he committed to it. But he's been in the league how long at this point? It just seems like it hasn't happened. So I don't know if it's fair to expect that one, but I do think it's still fair to expect just a little bit more offense that doesn't always run through Russell Westbrook, you know? But you know where you should run through you should run through to the top of the description because I uploaded a new podcast. That was a terrible segue.